What's up, guys? It's your boy Jamaica here, coming at you with another tournament recap for Season 7, Week 7. The Thursday tournament was won with Mardu Life by Briar Moss. Briar Moss is back, guys. He hasn't won a tournament in a while, but now he's come full circle. This is the first deck he played. We talked about it a lot in the very first podcast, which will be a link below. I haven't talked about this podcast on YouTube, but yeah, we talked about this deck. It's a Mardu Life. Called Martyr Life because it's basically a way to it's a combination of like immolating Soul Eater and like Children of the Coreless. You can kind of just like kill your opponent on turn 3. You pump all your life into the Soul Eater, and then you play a Children, and then you kind of pump your life again if everything goes well. But there's also other like interesting ways to kind of use Soul Eater in a way to kill your opponent. Let's go over the deck list. Mardu's kind of an interesting sort of interesting mana base in the sense that it has Auntie's Hovel here. And I think down here is ancient. Oh no, ancient amphitheaters. But Auntie's Hovels are really one of those lands that comes to play untapped with things like Nameless Version or other goblins like Grenzo. So it's kind of just like it also has the ancient amphitheater for the giant card reveal sort of thing. So you can get a lot of like untapped duels, which is kind of like the appealing thing about Mardu deck. Children of Coreless is pretty great. You use your life total a lot in this sort of deck. Life total is a resource after all. So Children here can kind of just like pump you back up, especially with Immolating Soul Eater, like I said. Kind of just like you can pump it all the way to like pretty much in a killing position with the Soul Eater with Children out. So it's pretty great. Fling is another way to kind of like make use of a gigantic Soul Eater. You know, just flicking it at your opponent. You're dead. Look at that. Tormenting Voice is a way to sort of like filter through redundant sort of like combo pieces here. Names Inversion, not really super great, but good enough in certain aspects. It kills Fellows, kills other Soul Leaders, things like that, but it also like triggers stuff for your Auntie's Hovel here. Mesmeric Fiend, it's kind of a way to kind of like see if the coast is clear here. So you can just kind of like get through your damage. Shelter is another way to push through damage here. Also draws a card, so it's cantrip, so it's always good. Wall of Blood, sort of like an extra Soul Eater. It doesn't attack though, but you can use it in combination of things like Fling. Pulse of the Forge, you're pretty much always going to be at a lower life total than your opponent, so Pulse is always going to come back to your hand for the most part. Claim to Flame here is kind of a redundant way of getting back your Soul Eaters, because that's a big target, you know? And it gets back to Children, so you can kind of like do more life shenanigans if you want. Also, the Fame parts, you know, nothing to scoff at either. Haste, +2/+0, it's pretty good. Kind of kills your opponent out of nowhere. Grenzo, I've always argued that I think this is a terrible card in this deck, but Briar Moss will pretty much tell you that it's basically a big guy. Sometimes you just want to block a lot. This is his explanation of it. So this guy's pretty much scalable because it has an X casting cost. So, I mean, at 2/2, for 2 mana it's a 2/2, and every other mana gets bigger and bigger. So, and it can find pieces here and there, or put stuff in your graveyard. Because you do have things like Claim to Fame and like Insult to Injury here. That's also another Aftermath card. And also it's kind of like another expensive Fling, or kind of just like hits your opponent. Things you can hit off of Grenzo here. Calling Gem's another interesting card. Kind of like fixes your mana in a weird way. Lets you get more land drops, I guess. There's some Vivids in the deck, so you can rebuy a Vivid. So that's a pretty interesting card. I would like to see like a landfall deck. That'd be interesting. Then Toil and Trouble, sort of another interesting card. Sort of another way to like draw more cards, or maybe your opponent is just holding a bunch of like removal spells, so you can just hit him like that. So sort of like I could see somewhere sort of weird like interaction where you like insult and then use Toil and Trouble and hit your opponent because they're just holding all these removal spells for your Immolating Soul Eater. So it's kind of another way of doing some weird damage. The sideboard, Fire Exchange Furnace and Sentinel Totem. The split here is like maybe there's a Hermit Druid deck that's kind of using your entire graveyard, and Furnace is just too slow. You do use your graveyard quite a bit in this deck, so you don't want like all the totems. But sometimes you want to nuke the whole graveyard, so the split here is there for that. Spirit of Law, mostly for mono red, burn, or just red deck with in general. Light of Day is for the zombie decks in general. I think aggro is pretty much a bad matchup here, and for most combo decks in general. Single Seal Cleansing, just for random, you know, artifacts or enchantments. That's what it does. More red caps here. Sort of just a way to like hedge against like other aggro decks. Kind of just blocks a bunch. Nature's Ruin for the green decks. And then Megrum here, interesting for the discard decks. I guess he's thinking about his own combo deck, so it's kind of a hedge against that. But yeah, I think we've come full circle. I think he's like, I think Brian Ross is one with all of the decks he's kind of featured in the tournament scene. So good stuff to him. If you want to see all the deck lists from this tournament, check the description below. There's a link. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.